On today's episode, we have Laurel Brannagan. Laurel is a registered social worker who brings over 20 years of frontline experience in Windsor, Ontario, supporting children, youth, families facing challenges related to mental health, addiction, abuse, trauma, and family conflict. She's worked closely with many first responders and families, helping them process trauma, manage stress, and strengthen their relationships both at work and at home. Mother of two boys, and recently a new business owner, we're excited to chat with Laurel about her experience with success, failure, employee versus self-employed mind shift, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I do.
If we could live by the woulda, shoulda, couldas, like we would all be different people because we always have some, some thought process afterwards to think how we would have handled something.
40 years ago, you could get the same job, you could work at the same place for 40 years, you'd actually have a pension, you'd have benefits, and you would have been taken care of. Now, I mean, the average person, I want to say they have 7 to 10 different careers throughout their working life.
Individuals are just wanting more connection. And sometimes as group work can be scary because I don't want other people to know what's going on. It can also be really empowering to meet other people.
Welcome back to another episode of Cracking the Success Vault. Today we're joined by Laurel Brannagan, 20 years as a social worker, now a psychotherapist. We were just joking around a little bit before we got started here about what this is going to be like. It's going to be very fluid, but thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I want to start, I just mentioned I'm a really big personal development junkie.
Yes.
I love reading books. I love seeing other people's. I think we can learn a lot from other people's examples, their past, people's decisions, good, bad. I think we can learn from everybody. But before we kind of jump into that, I want you to take me through. Were you born and raised here? How did you grow up? And at the same time, how did you get involved in social work into this, personal development, psychotherapy type role?
Yeah, it's been a journey. So I'm born and raised here, Tecumseh when it was small town Tecumseh, not the metropolis it is now, when we had no bus systems, nothing to do there. I'm the middle of 3 kids, grew up in a first responder family. My dad was a Windsor police officer. My mom was a nurse. Extended first responder family, lots of uncles, grandpa, cousins who are also all in that role. I think a fairly normal middle-class childhood, normal, I guess, as in what that was, but as an adult now realizing how not normal it was in a first responder family, the experiences I had. But did my education here, did my undergrad at University of Windsor in psychology, did my master's at University of Windsor for social work. So, I'm just a lifer here.
Just a lifer.
Yeah.
I said this on a podcast the other day. I don't understand people who leave here. This is such a great place.
Yeah.
Coming from Alberta, I really wasn't sure what to expect. But weather's warm, people are super friendly, cost of living, obviously it's increased over the last little bit, but it's better than most other places.
And even on that, I did a lot of traveling. So when in my early 20s, I left and I went to, Europe for a summer and backpacked. I spent a year in Australia. So I got to explore different things and ultimately always came back here. So definitely, holds a place for me.
Do you think doing some kind of travel, getting experiences from outside of the area made you realize how great Windsor could be?
You get different perspective. And even like you're talking about personal development, right? A theme that was really driven in my house growing up that I continue in my household now is life experience. And you don't really, I think, know what you want to be, where you want to go without branching out a little bit and learning that. So putting myself in really challenging situations, which, again, growing up, being in Europe, not that was challenging, but I grew up in a small town where I didn't have a bus system.
Right.
I had never had to really take care of myself in a lot of ways. And now I had to figure out how to travel, how to pay for things. And it just really taught me a lot about myself.
Right. And so do you think that came from the fact that you grew up in a first responder household with lots of different experiences? Every day is going to be different. You don't know whether you're good day on the job, bad day on the job, any of that kind of stuff. You think that's kind of where that life experience kind of outcome came from for you?
I think finding the joy in that for sure. In my household, I think because when we did have quality time together, it was so important. any kid that grows up in a first responder family knows that just because your parent is off work doesn't mean that they can't get subpoenaed to court or get called back for a case. So when we did have family time, it was super important. And it was always very big drive in my family to explore the world, see the most you can. Jobs are great. Things you learn in offices are great, but life experience really teaches you more about yourself.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a positive message.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, my swim career, very fortunate. I got to travel the world, compete on the national team, had a full ride scholarship to the US, which a lot of kids don't get. But being able to travel the world and see other cultures, experience other things, people just don't understand how great that we can have it here in Canada and Windsor. Because they just don't have those experiences, right?
Yeah, and you meet people that are out of your walk of life. Something that, I don't know if I read this or heard this on a podcast, but really resonated with me. When you grow up in the town you grew up in, you don't get the choice and freedom of who your friends are, where you go to school.
Right.
So you start off in this small pool of grade school, and those are your only friends. Then you get to high school, and you get to expand it. If you get, to post-secondary, whatever that looks like, you expand it even more. But ultimately, it's all still really determined by your location. So when you get yourself out of that location and you get to do things like you did and I did, you get to meet people from different walks of life, different corners of the world, and it really shapes you.
Yeah. So I would assume that you are a big believer in the saying that, you're the average of the 5 people that you hang out with the most then.
Oh, yeah.
Big time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so grow up in a first responder family. Are your parents still in those fields?
Retired.
Okay, awesome. And so when did you know that social work, helping others, was something that you wanted to do? Obviously, you're seeing your mom as a nurse, your dad as a police officer, helping others, having the day-to-day that are different. So was there ever like a moment in time where you're like, I just want to help other people? Or was it sort of a progression that happened as you grew up?
Definitely a progression. I mean, my goal from when I was a small child was I wanted to be a police officer. Like,
oh, really?
I wanted to be a Navy SEAL, which we don't have in Canada. Yeah. But I was obsessed with, the movie with the crisis, which the things, the hero mentality. Yeah. So and again, I was immersed in it. Every dinner conversation with, Thanksgiving holiday was shop talk, listening to my grandpa's stories from, the 50s and 60s. So I just was so immersed in it that it just felt like such a calling. It really wasn't probably until about second year university. And even at that point, I wasn't sure if it was social work. But I guess to back up, I, at about 20 years old, got a job at a residential facility locally where we had, at the time, we don't have it anymore, but a young offenders jail. We had a hospital bed program for youth that struggled with mental health and suicide ideations. There was a school-based program. And that naturally happened because I met someone, because I got out of my bubble and wanted to get life experience in university because I wasn't fortunate enough to go away. So stayed here, joined an extracurricular volleyball team where I met someone that worked there. So very much like not fear-based in me. I wanted to get new experiences. Yeah. Met someone that said, you should apply. I paid for my education myself along the way. So I needed to work throughout school. And that just naturally, I kind of fell into this career, what started as a job to help me pay for my education. Right. And then just quickly fell in love with it.
And so what did you fall in love with? Like what part of it did you fall in love with?
I loved working in a multidisciplinary setting. I loved that it wasn't just one streamline of working with one profession. I worked with doctors and nurses and teachers and social workers and child and youth workers, and everyone coming together for the collective to really work on helping. So the facility was for youth ages 12 to 18. Okay. So yeah, it just felt like it felt like somewhere where you didn't just have to focus on your own skills. You were able to rely on other skill sets and really learn, talking about personal development, learn from other people in the field. And
so if I can ask, how old are you right now?
42.
42. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're just slightly older than me. So you started that first job at 20.
Right.
So you've had 22 years experience in this industry. I don't know if this is probably true because everybody's different, but are there common threads that people that you have seen or have dealt with over the years of certain traumas lead to certain things? Are there common threads, or is everybody different?
I would say everyone's different. I mean, I think there's certain common threads in, when I work with youth, there was a lot of misconceptions even 20 years ago about why youth cut, why youth, have such high levels of anxiety or stress or mental health. And I think a lot of that is a lot more common in a lot of us than not. We have different support systems. We have different, life experiences that maybe some are able to come through it a little bit different. I grew up in a family where if you struggled with some mental health, it was very normal in my family to say, well, you're going to go talk to someone.
Right.
But I've worked with many families over the years where you just don't, you don't go there.
Right.
So I had a bad experience. We don't talk about it. This is private. So I think there are common threads that probably get us there. But then the next level, if you're going to raise the bar a little bit, is, well, what is your support system like to help you access that?
Right. And we're going to talk about that in a sec, but you just hit on something that we were talking about earlier, which is you grew up in a household where you went to talk to somebody if there was an issue, right? I didn't really learn personal development until I was probably 23, 24. Never really talked about my feelings, never really, seeked out personal development or a therapist or anything like that. And we joked a little bit before the podcast started where, one experience with a therapist is not the same as another therapist.
Right.
And you mentioned that I said, it's like dating. Just because you have one bad experience dating somebody doesn't mean you're never dating ever again.
Right.
Right. And so, walk me through that a little bit where people, maybe they have a bad experience and why should people take a secondary look at talking to somebody different?
So we joked about that because it's, when I have a first session with a client or I'm doing an intake over the phone, I really do my ultimate goal is that you seek services. If they're not with me, I am not offended because I don't ever want to be someone's bad experience that they don't ever go back to work on themselves and work on their mental health or wellness. And so for me, that is really important to compare it that way, that if you don't, I'll give you an example. So I've worked with people, I have friends who, super supportive of my career, but will not see a therapist and haven't gone. I have a friend who went to a therapist when she was 12 years old. She's 45 now and says, it was a bad experience. I'll never go back. And, I always often think of that when you say the dating, I've used that as an example as well to say, so you're just never going to try again. Right. Because we're not a fit for everyone. And I really explain that. I have an area that I'm comfortable in, that my background is, my knowledge is in, my professional development is in. If I can't meet those needs, I will refer you out to a colleague who I know that is their area of specialty. So it is hard because, if someone has a bad financial investment, are you never going to go to a bank again or have that?
Yeah.
No, maybe it wasn't the right person for you. So you got to shop around. Yeah. You definitely have to know.
And you're a whole different person too, right? Between the time that, whether it's, you saw somebody at 15 years old or you had a bad experience financially at 30, 5 years goes by, you've had 5 years of different experiences, 5 years of different things. Like, you're a whole different person that's seeing the world through a whole different lens. Yeah. Why not give it a second chance with somebody else? Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting. Okay. And so you mentioned your focus. So, and you gave me your bio. There was lots of words in it. Yeah. Where is your particular focus when it comes to what it is that you do? So, I still, my heart is always in working with youth. That was something that I needed a break from after working in a residential facility for a while, and kind of being a parent now and coming back full circle and having youth that want to see my services. At the time, a lot of these youth didn't have the autonomy to say they wanted to be there, right? And what's really neat now is when I have youth that say, like, no, mom or dad, whether that be an example because their parents are in counseling, saying, I want someone to talk to. Frontline workers are definitely like a passion of mine in getting me to where I am now. I didn't appreciate, I guess, the work that my parents did, the jobs they had. I knew how it impacted me as a kid, as a child. I saw the positive of it. I lived the negative of it. I saw my parents really struggle with how to balance that.
So I really enjoy working with frontline workers when I say frontline first responders, people are often, I think our minds jump to police officers, firefighters, but really that's social workers, nurses, hospital staff,
Right.
EMS. I worked for many years. I worked 10 years in child welfare, and a lot of our first referral calls were from EMS and the things that they were the first to see,
Right.
things that were happening. So, and how that resonates with you. I know as someone that's worked 20 years in this field, and I've sat across from tables and heard horrific stories and things that they turn into Law and Order episodes, which I've often said, it's not like a Law and Order episode, but it kind of is.
Yep.
It's real life. It impacts you,
Yeah.
and it impacts your family. It impacts your relationships. When you're a first responder and you're going out to a call, I guess I'll preface this. We live in Windsor, Ontario. We don't have a lot of murder. We don't have a ton of homicides.
Correct.
People will often say, well, look at our neighbors, Detroit, what they go through. Go up the 401 to Toronto, what they go through. What I think I really want to educate the community on is you don't have to deal with murder every day to experience trauma. Right? The amount of officers or social workers or EMS workers that I've worked with where we're the first on to see horrific abuse. Find, deceased bodies because people have done a wellness check.
Yeah.
So you don't see those images and just let go of it.
Yeah.
You then go home and you do homework and you make dinner, you go to Little League, and
Right.
it impacts you in ways you don't notice sometimes at the moment, because we do a lot of in first responder frontline work, joke about, we have a lot of dark sense of humor. And a lot of that is a coping mechanism to get through that you did this job during the day.
Yeah.
And then I go home and I tuck my kids in and I do all the normal parenting stuff. But it does resonate with you and it does sit with you. And if you don't unpack it, it will continue to come out in other areas of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't want to say too much because I don't really know what I should and shouldn't say, but like I have a friend who's a firefighter and some of the stories that he's told me that, and he's got little kids at home. So when he responds to things that, an accident's happened or someone's passed away and they're a child, like it hits him real hard because his kids are young. Walk me through a little bit. You mentioned, because I don't know if you've heard of Landmark Forum. So it's like a personal development course you can take over a couple weekends. I did it probably 10, 12 years ago. And you mentioned something about the stories, sort of almost the way I took it was the stories that we tell ourselves about what's going on in our lives. They relate it in Landmark as like as a circular pattern. So for me, it was, I was always swimming. My parents, my mom was always with me, but my dad was always working.
Okay.
And because my dad was never with me, watching me swim, that I made this story in my mind that, well, that meant he didn't love me, didn't care about me, whatever. And then I always find reasons as to why that thing is valid.
Right.
And it wasn't until I learned later on in life, well, no, he was just working to provide for me. But as a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid that, wanted his parents there, but also was like too cool to tell his parents that he wanted them to be there. That can it can sit with you for a long time unless you sit there and learn what stories have I been telling myself for 20 years.
Well, where was the seed planted, right? Sometimes it's through our friends, through social media, through TV. We grew up in a horrible generation of watching shows on TV of, you can be beautiful if you get. I had a client and I talk about this. I think it was called The Swan, but it was, you can be beautiful and a new person, but we're going to do $100,000 of plastic surgery. And, we talk about why do all these young girls and boys, but have eating disorders or body image issues. And we blame currently things about social media. But, I grew up in the 90s where this was TV.
Right.
We mocked people. We made fun of people. We watched shows where the dad that wasn't there because he was out doing something he shouldn't have been doing. So we do create stories, but I also think there's sometimes, and like you had mentioned, I was too cool to say something. Even when I circle back to my parents, were open about therapy services, they didn't have the skills at the time to really communicate with us about feelings, but they knew, okay, I can't, but I'm going to put you in front of someone that can.
Right.
So we were halfway there. We weren't fully there, right? So even you saying that as a parent, I've had to go back to my kids and say, mom's worked late the last few nights because I've had to make sure other kids are safe. That doesn't make my kids feel great. They're like, but you missed bedtime, you missed dinner and whatnot. So they create these stories as well.
Right.
So yeah, it's a balance. It's really hard. And I think I really encourage, even as adults, I've had adults where I'm like, your parents are in your 70s. Tell them that hurt you. We're not fixing it. We're not changing what happened, but you're creating a moment of vulnerability and understanding to say, I know you did your best and your intent was not to make me feel this way, but this is what came across.
Right.
There can be so much healing even later on in life.
Right. It doesn't have to be in the moment.
No.
Interesting. And so, okay, my business partner would laugh if I said this, but and he'll see it anyways, maybe. But I'm a person who I hate dealing with conflict.
Okay.
I hate it. I could feel like, and I've been thinking about this a lot over the last week because we were going to have this conversation in the podcast where I think the reason I don't like conflict is I think I take a very long time to walk through my own, not just my feelings about whatever happened, but also what I could have done to prevented that thing from happening or whatever. And then 3 or 4 or 5 days go by or a week goes by and I'm like, okay, now that I've worked myself through it, I know what I would have changed or could have done better or done something differently. And I'm like, but it's a week later, so I'm not even going to bring it up. But at the same time, if something then happens 3 or 4 years later, that brings back up the same feeling of the thing that could have been dealt with, I just don't do it because I'm like, it's been a week and we don't need to rehash this out. What would your advice to me be in helping me just say, you know what? Okay, I've walked myself through it. This is how I felt and why I felt this way, and maybe what I should have changed or whatever. And then actually taking the step to have that conversation with those people.
So, I mean, we could talk for hours about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of the work I do is in attachment base as well.
Okay.
So understanding your attachment style. So sometimes if we want to avoid conflict, we might be maybe avoidant. And a lot of that is learned in our childhood, right? Typically our parents sometimes are very different attachment styles. I grew up with one of my parents very avoidant, and we talk about it now all the time. And that sometimes is a message of really what that does is that keeps you safe in that moment, right? Instead of having and jumping to the conflict in that moment, by avoiding it, it keeps you safe. So it's not necessarily that any attachment style is right or wrong, but when you can understand a little bit more about yourself. So for you to say, I recognize that. I also always joke with my clients, if we could live by the woulda, shoulda, couldas, we would all be different people because we always have some, with some thought process afterwards to think how we would have handled something. Yeah. But when we can recognize that maybe we're avoiding something because we're worried about the outcome or worried about how our partner is going to, or colleague, business partner, whoever is going to react, or if they're going to distance themselves more. When we can start to challenge those a little bit and start to get a little bit out of that comfort zone and just dip your toe in the water of shifting that change a bit, you understand yourself a bit different. You understand how to connect in relationships different. So it's definitely, it's a lot of inner work, right? It's not something, and even talking about some of what we've talked about already, it's a lot of long work. None of this, you might have an aha moment in a session where you're like, wow, that makes so much sense. Okay, but now we're going to dig deeper and keep looking a little bit more into it. So it's definitely more complex. Just because you found the little diamond in the rough doesn't mean that it's more complex than just avoiding. I don't like conflict. No one likes conflict. I've often said this, I don't seek out conflict, but I really am tried to not avoid because I know where it's led me in the past. So some things we need to avoid though, right? Again, it's about keeping us safe. If there's depending on a situation that you don't need to engage in addressing everything. So safety is a word we talk a lot about because your style is not wrong. It's kept you safe in your relationships and to where you are now in life. Maybe it's hindered some. None of us are perfect. It's when we get to self-explore that a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah. See, I love personal development because I could sit here and think constantly about, okay, well, this happened and that happened, and let's just keep going back and forth. And I just love trying to be a better version of myself. Right. So I'm constantly okay, this, that, okay. And then I get a few days down the road and I'm like, I should have said this and I should have done that. And I would have felt better if I'd done this, but it's been a few days. So I'm just whatever. And I just don't. I don't know why. I just don't.
You know, it's hard. It's a lot of, I think what really turns people off sometimes from therapy or personal development, whatever you're doing, it's a lot of mental load. It's a lot of stress. We live in a stressful society. We have stressful jobs. We have so much going on. You know, the world says focus on your physical health, focus on your finances, focus on all this. And then you're going to tell me to focus on my well-being as well.
Right.
Like that sometimes is just the tip of the iceberg where it can be daunting. It can be a lot.
Yeah. And I've had people in the past, I mean, through my personal development journey, I've had lots of people also and mentors also be like, if you truly want to know what you need to fix, like go talk to that spouse, go talk to that person and be like, you know, where in the last week did I screw up, and tell me how I made you feel crappy. And you're like, man, it takes a lot to be like, okay, I'm going to put the guard down and I'm going to let you tell me how I've screwed up or how bad I've been in order to make myself better. But until you break that down, you can't rebuild it up in a better way.
No. And I mean, that just goes back to communication. And when I work with couples, a lot of what we talk about is, what is communication? You and I talking, we're communicating, but that's not actual healthy communication, right? Having healthy communication comes with good healthy vulnerability. So if you were to go to your wife and say, you know, I'm going to want to sit down and talk and communicate with you and talk about what went well or what didn't go well in our relationship this week, you're trusting your partner that you're going to be vulnerable. Yeah. And again, I like working with men. A lot of my focus as well, working with men in trying to break some of these I guess stigmas. These stigmas that, you know, have really been seeds planted in us at really young ages. You know, men don't cry, men don't feel these like deep feelings. Yeah. And they'll say, well, I'm not vulnerable. I don't cry. I'm like, well, that's not vulnerability. Vulnerability is saying, I'm going to trust you with my feelings and emotions right now. And you are going to hold them. You are not going to judge me for it. You're going to sit in that for a minute. That is being vulnerable with your partner. If I say, you know, Sean, I'm really feeling this way. I don't like the way this went today. And you hurt my feelings when this happened. And it's tossed back with, well, judgment and you did this and blame. Well, now we're shutting down the line of communication. Right. So if you're saying to your partner, I want to know what went well what did I do well that made you feel like special this week? And she gives you some negative, you're being vulnerable and saying, thank you for sharing that. I you know, whatever, we talk for hours about that, instead of saying, well, I didn't do that because you did this. Well, now she's not going to be vulnerable and open up to you. And it's just this vicious cycle,
It's just a cycle, right?
And vulnerability happens in, I'm sure, you and your business partner. It happens in all forms of relationships, not just romantic.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this for hours. I'm an open book for most of the time. And as Jason and Chris and everybody that saw the podcast, I'm perfectly fine with crying. Yeah. I've done on the podcast already. Okay,
so put it on repeat because more men need
to
see that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know where it comes from. I have always kind of really like worn my heart on my sleeve. My business partner, like, he jokes because he knows when I'm upset. He knows when I'm frustrated. He knows when I just don't care about the thing that we're working on in the boardroom. I only have so much tolerance for like systems and processes. Like, my brain just doesn't, I'd rather go help people, go make more sales, I'd rather go stand in front of a room of 50,000 people and like sing and dance than sit in a room and talk about like systems and process. Like, I just don't care for it. Right. And so he has to be like, okay, we're going to have a 3-hour meeting, but you only have to be a part of it for an hour, but I need your attention. Yeah. Right.
But he knows your threshold.
But he knows my threshold. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And he can tell when I'm like, okay, we're nearing that threshold that he's done. Like, which is good, I think. But it's also, I don't know if it's bad. I wouldn't say bad. Bad's not the right word, but you know, some people they don't like being able to know that somebody can, you know, have their heart on their sleeve and they're just emotional, and
it can make other people, I think a lot of it
uncomfortable.
And that's what I was going to say. And we try so hard to not make other people uncomfortable. Right. Instead of actually like what we need in that moment. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So, I just love saying interesting. So let's change a little bit. Okay. So what made you want to go from 20 years of social work, I assume with a couple different companies, one company?
Yeah, so I worked in a residential facility for 12 years, and then I worked in child welfare for 10 years.
For 10 years. Okay. And so what made you want to go from those two career paths to the self-employed world where everything is on us? You take this big leap of faith. And at the same time, I'm also curious because as someone who is a psychotherapist and has, regular conversations with their clients, what kind of call it intrusive thoughts or challenges did you have mentally thinking about this step from going from an employee world to a self-employed world?
Yeah.
Where it is all on you. I mean, I think a lot of us are afraid of, now we've bought ourselves a job. So we are working 60 or 70 hours a week, but we're still being paid for 40 because it hasn't just kind of clicked over yet. We're not at the point in our business where we get to have a little bit more free time and flexibility, and we have to be everything. I know you joked about the accounting thing. You're the accountant and you're the HR person and you're the booker and you're the, you got to do the everything, right? So what made you go from employee to self-employed world, and what sort of mental hurdles and hiccups and kind of challenges did you have to fight with as someone who does this for a living?
Yeah. It's hard. I have so many thoughts about this because sometimes I question, pinch myself, what am I doing? Why am I here? And then I have an amazing day with a bunch of clients and I'm like, oh, I love this.
Yeah.
There's I guess we go back, everything circles back to life experience, I think, for me, right? I never necessarily set out with a goal of doing private practice. When I went back and did my master's, I had my first son at the same time, and I thought, no, I'm just going to get into a career, and you get really living in a blue collar town, get your pension, get in and get out, right? Hire to retire. I hear that term quite a bit here. Yeah. And so that was my path, and I was going to do it. And I loved my career. I loved working in the community. With all of the years that I've worked, I've seen so many holes in our system. I've seen so many areas that we could do better in. And where I get really frustrated is it's not the individuals doing the work, because in Windsor-Essex, we have OHIP, we have government-funded agencies. None of these are private businesses. When you work in any mental health field, you are government-funded. I've done some placements and internships in grassroots agencies where you don't have as much funding. So you have the executive director writing, grant after grant to keep the doors open.
Wow.
And it's a hustle, right? And I've seen people who are in dire need of services. I worked several years mainly focused on addiction, and we have services. People say we have nothing. We do. The problem is there are long wait lists, right? There are long gaps, and maybe you don't meet the full criteria for what they need. But if you have money, you can pay out of pocket and you can go to an outpatient treatment. So as much as we are still, a government, like an OHIP covered system, there is still a lot of privatized where if you have money, absolutely you can get help. And if you don't, you have to wait for those government-funded systems to be in place. So I definitely saw a lot of holes. In the last few years especially, this really push across agencies is do more with less.
Of course.
Right? Do more, always. Keep doing the job you were doing 5 years ago, but we're not going to have as many workers. We're going to cut funding. We're not going to have the resources to provide to clients. That was really sitting heavy on me, and I was getting really frustrated. Where I would go and do my job and make sure families and kids are safe. And in the past, I could have provided some extra resources. And sorry, but we can't do that now. File would close, and they're going to reopen again because they can't access services. Right. I've seen families in need with kids with autism, and they're sitting years on a wait list for autism services, and how the entire family unit is impacted. Right. Where I think a lot of times we focus on just the lens of how is Sean impacted by this? But the reality is, how is your whole circle of support impacted by this? So I had always had the intent of maybe I would dabble in this area at some point, but I'm very big, personal development, growth. I can learn certain things along the way, but I need to be confident and comfortable with my clients that I know the system, I know what's happening in the community. So a lot of community development, networking, meeting other agencies and talking to what's working well with their agencies, what's not with them. And just something in the last couple of years, I just kind of felt like I was hitting the glass ceiling a little bit to say I don't know what other movement I have, what other change that I can help make. Saw a lot of my own friends and colleagues not accessing their own mental health services. We get not all jobs, but different jobs, especially frontline
Yep.
first responders, there is a certain level of all their insurances are different of what they get covered for mental health services.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that don't access it is just, astronomical.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. And I love podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's a specific one where he's a first responder, and he talked about the example he gave. If I were to give you a free personal trainer, you would take it in a heartbeat. But if I'm going to give you free assistance for your wellness, people are like, no, I'm good, man. I don't need to do it, right?
Right.
And so it's really not free. You're paying into it. You're paying into these services.
Correct.
So I had a friend that took the leap, and she went into the private practice world. And I had considered it for a couple of years, and people had said, would you consider it? I don't know. It's a risk. And you go back to talking about anything we do, it's risk. Yeah. And when I think about my last 20 years, everything I did was risk and taking, I guess, betting on myself a bit, right?
Right.
If I decided I went and traveled Europe for a summer by myself, I was supposed to go with a friend, she backed out. No, I'm going to do it. I cried the whole way to the airport saying, I don't want to do this because I'm so scared. But I did, and the growth I got from that. So, and I say to my clients all the time now, change only comes with challenge. And so
Correct.
you kind of sometimes say, you got to practice what you preach a bit, right? Like I say to my kids all the time, yes, this is hard. Put the effort in and it will get easier.
Right.
And sometimes you just look in the mirror and you're like, okay, I think it's time now.
Yeah.
So I did. I made the leap. Opened my business. Kind of started from. Like I said, I had a few friends in the industry already who were super supportive and helping me navigate those first steps.
Yeah.
A lot of late nights. A lot of imposter syndrome. Oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I was comfortable. I was good at this other job. I mean, I guess my version of what I thought was good at. Why would I take this risk? And I had a lot of people question me. I had a lot of people with the best intent say, this is going to be hard. Are you at a point in your life you can do this? Is this a risk that you want to take? Yeah. And, I have a really good support system, and I just got to the point where I thought risk has never failed me wrong before. Right. I have failed and learned from that. And so I thought, if I take the chance to do this right now, I'm 42 years old, I've got another 20 years to work. If this doesn't work out, if I decide that it's not my passion, if I decide that, and I can always, or do something else. Right. And I think that's the greatest thing, that you get to shift in your life and you get to make those decisions, right? Yeah. For me, it was really cool watching. So I have two boys, 13 and 8, and watching them watch me go through this, and their excitement and I had to sit them down and say, there's going to be changes in the house. We're not going to get fast food maybe as much as we did before. And there are going to be little shifts and changes we make. So it was a family decision. Right. And
you and your spouse talked about this for some time?
Significantly. Yeah. Yeah. To the point where it was, you're not going to be mad at me if this doesn't, because you do. And I mean, I supported him through parts of his life when he made career changes. Mm-hmm. He went from in retail to electrical. He went back to school to be an electrician, and then eventually now a teacher. So we've really supported each other through risk. Our kids have watched us do this. Yeah. When I graduated.
And there's got to be some good lessons in watching, having your kids watch you do those things, because I even like my business partner mentioned, he was in the property casualty space, so home and auto commercial insurance for 23 years, I guess now. And he was making significant money, working it from home, a couple hours a day, because he had built a business, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't his business, but he had built clientele. Yep. His income was there. And when we started this thing, he was like, you know what, part of the reason I want to start this thing is because I don't want my own family to think that you can make this kind of money a couple hours a day. Right. Because that's not the norm, right? No. Most people, it's, 8-9 hour days, with a little bit of lunch and a couple breaks, and you're being paid for 7.5 of them. Yeah. Right. And, most people don't make, more than $100,000 a year. Yep. Right. And so part of his thought process was, I want my kids to watch me work hard to build something for himself, to build something for his family. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that when you have kids that thought process and that dynamic changes.
Totally shifts, because they watch everything you do. Right. They watched me come home super burnt out from a really high crisis job. And I don't want to say it was ever like a deficit that they had to go through, because they also learned compassion. The same things I learned growing up in the family I did, but when my son will say to me, do you have any new clients this week? Or, or
That's cool.
yeah, or like if I'm, on my computer and he can see that I'm working on my social media stuff or my website, like he gives me input, because as a 13-year-old, like they have lots of feedback.
They have a lot of skills,
so, it's been bonding. There are definitely times where, they know that if I have my work phone versus my personal phone, and I'm very clear about keeping all that separate, that they know this is mom's working right now. Yes, in the beginning, I'm going to be a lot more maybe on the computer or doing things while we're on the couch watching a movie, but it's for a time. And I have to put, just like when my son goes to hockey and he is so focused on winning, I'm like, but I want to see the effort. I want to see, are you putting effort into what you're doing? And are you improving week to week? And that's sort of the same thing I'm trying to teach them. I'm not going to be at the end goal in the first, maybe even 5 years, but I'm putting in the effort every week, the self-development, so that I can be the best for my clients and I can feel like I'm doing, the best job for them.
Right.
So I feel like there's these lessons that you really adapt to all parts of your life.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. And so let's talk about you mentioned the people, some people were questioning you when you were getting started or thinking about taking this leap. I have found, and I'm very aware that I am different than most people. I have basically been self-employed for the most part since I was 21. I've had the odd job here and there, and I only took those jobs to pay bills while I continued to build my clientele. Like that, I've been self-employed for quite some time, and they might not ever watch this, but the people who are the closest to me are always the ones who are the most fearful. And I think a lot of people, whether they're listening to their parents or their best friends or their partner, those people are sometimes the ones who are the most skeptic or the most afraid, not because they don't want you to succeed, but because they actually are trying to protect you.
Oh, absolutely.
And they don't want you to fail, right? Is that kind of how you felt with the people in your life that were?
Oh, 100%. Like, and that's, and now I'm still close with them. And, I get the feedback of, no, I'm proud of what you did and you're doing it. And you're doing the same work you were doing, but on a different, more personalized, like one-on-one level now. Yeah. And that's exactly what it was. It was the fear of like, I don't want you to lose out on these retirement benefits. Right, and, now I'm paying into my own and your security, I guess that's what I'm trying to think of is that security. But at the same time, like, I get to build my own, I guess I bet on myself now, right? All these skills that I possess and I work so hard to learn, I get to kind of bet on myself. And so a lot of that fear, I think, really did come from a place of love, a place of, wanting me to be okay. I think there's some fear in like, is it going to change relationships and connections? And
are you always going to be selling every time you're in a room with people, talking, trying to find a new client? Like, it's one thing that it's funny because every time we go to like a friend function or a networking thing, my wife sometimes is always like, you can't just leave me and go like mingle and start talking to people all the time. There's a time in the night when you can do it, but like, let's also spend some time together too. And I'm like, I have to balance I'm in a room full of people and there's people I don't know, so I want to go introduce myself. But at the same time, I also have to respect the fact that like it is a date night sometimes. Yeah. And I can't just like go to this event and then ditch her and just go talk to people. Right?
Oh, I used to, in an agency job, I'd shut my phone off at 4:30 and I didn't look at it till Monday morning. Right. And now it's exactly that. I'm like, what, just at dinner and I'm checking it. And it won't always be that way. But right now, and I'm still learning. I had really good boundaries in my previous career. And now I'm trying to still balance that into this new career. But it is hard when it's my business that I'm running.
I also like the fact that you said, in terms of like betting on yourself, I have always found that a lot of people think that just because you work for someone else and they pay you a paycheck, that somehow that correlates to security. Yeah. I mean, it can be taken away from you in a heartbeat. I mean, how many people, I've been in Windsor now for 8 years, and I don't know how many times there's been layoffs and rehires and layoffs at plants and this and that. And like, there is no real true security unless you're building something for yourself, right? You get to build the security for you,
Right.
and you get to build the security for your family, which I think so many people are just accustomed to. Well, go get that 9 to 5 job out of university, and you're going to be fine. Well,
Right.
it's not the way that it was. It's not now the way it was 40 years ago.
No.
30, 40 years ago, you could get the same job. You could work at the same place for 40 years.
Yeah.
You'd actually have a pension. You'd have benefits, and you would have been taken care of. Now, I mean, the average person, I want to say they have 7 to 10 different careers throughout their working life because they're not even using the degrees they got in school anymore.
No, and a lot of jobs, the new contracts that come out with them is you don't even get benefits after your retirement, right? So there's
Right.
a lot of different shift and change in that mentality of what living in a blue collar town, like you said, 40 years ago, the big three, what it was. It has really shifted. And even security. I've seen friends in my own field lose their positions. So you're right. You're never fully secure in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So talk to me a little bit then about sort of what is next for yourself. So you recently have been in business for yourself. So how long has it been now?
So I started full-time I started my business last December.
Okay.
And I started doing it full-time in April of this year.
In April. So it took a few months to do it, just get it off the ground,
Yeah.
start that full time in April. And so what are the next few years like for you?
So again, personal development. I'm very focused on trauma training, incorporating that into specifically frontline workers and addiction. So I have a background in working with individuals with addiction, but now I'm trying to get more education around how to service clients on a one-on-one instead of a crisis management position, more of a long-term goal of development with those clients. And just keep expanding my business. I love doing group work, so I'd like to continue getting into that role of making. Sometimes people are afraid of group work, but it can also be really empowering to build connection and community. Something I see more and more every day is the amount of adults that really are lacking community. If you're in the sober community and other than going to meetings and some of those aftercare programs, where do I find connection? And so I'm seeing that a lot more and more, that individuals are just wanting more connection. And sometimes as group work can be scary because I don't want other people to know what's going on, it can also be really empowering to meet other people.
Yeah.
I just want to keep learning, keep expanding, keep building my clientele, and seeing where that goes.
Yeah. We think that we are the only ones going through something.
So isolated.
It's so, so it's a funny example, but so my son is 6 months old, a couple days, but he's just not sleeping right now. It's crazy. He's wide awake at 10 and 11 o'clock at night. And you're you've fed all day. You've had a couple naps. You shouldn't be overtired. You shouldn't be undertired. I don't know what's going on. Logic tells me you should be sleeping right now. And he just won't.
Yeah.
He just wants to be awake, and he just wants to sit and stare at you. He's not crying. He's not upset. He just wants to look in your eyes. And you're like, can you just go to sleep, please? I want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And my wife was reading a post the other day, and she's like, she saw something. It's I don't know. It's a British lady that is kind of a sleep trainer or whatnot. And she was like, I can't believe how many people are dealing with the exact same thing we're dealing with. And I'm like, yeah, because you're in your own bubble, but that doesn't mean that people aren't dealing with the same things, right? Just because you feel like you're alone doing it because you only have your experiences to go off of.
Right.
Everybody else is having the exact same thought. Everybody else experiences the same things. It might not be as severe, or it might not be as long or as short, but we're never alone in the things that we're feeling.
And parenting is so isolating, right? Yeah. Parenting is, you feel like you're the only one going through these things. And because you go on social media and you see someone who just, has it all. My kid slept 13 hours. That from day one, they've done this. And, sometimes I think, is that true? Or, is
that the story you told yourself?
Right.
Or,
But it is different. And even, when I work with frontline workers and they feel very isolated in the shame or guilt that they feel at times, right? Like the woulda, shoulda, couldas. If I got to that call earlier, if I was able to, access this resource earlier, and it can be really isolating. The difference is all of your colleagues feel like really similar.
Right.
And, obviously there's so much confidentiality in my job, but I will a lot of times, reference that and say, I work with other individuals in your career and they sit on my couch and they say the exact same thing.
Right.
But we're also built to say, we push down that shame and guilt because if we openly talk about it, am I not good enough at my job? Are people going to trust me?
Right.
So there's a lot of feelings there that even as a parent, right? If I openly talk about, am I not a good parent because my kid is 6 months and not sleeping through the night, and I will tell you with a 13-year-old, I will take back sleepless nights at any point. But
it's funny you say that. I was literally just like, I was talking in a group chat the other day with some friends that I have. And I was like, I just wish he would sleep. And one of them was like, dude, I would take sleepless nights over my teenage son who's just like a complete.
Oh, I mean, they're exploring the world.
Yeah, they push boundaries like no other. And he was like, dude, I'd take that over anything. And I was like, right now I wouldn't. Like, I just want sleep.
Because you're in that moment,
I'm in the
right?
moment.
And I know some of the best parenting advice my mom ever gave me was don't ever wish you're on to the next. Always try to stay so focused in the moment, right? Which is so hard when you're in the thick of it.
Yeah.
And I even think that way in my career and everything, right? Like it's, yes, am I excited to get to the next 5 years? I'm excited for my kid to get out of that sleep phase. But also like stay in that moment and feel like, what does it feel like right now to be in that moment? Because there will come a time where you would take back those nights for anything because now they won't cuddle with you. They don't want to spend time with you, right? And so it's because
what I think the stat is something like 80% of a child's life is spent with you as parents in the first like 10 years.
Oh, probably. I mean, when you think about
it,
you'll hear 18 summers.
All the time.
Yep.
And the moment they're a teenager, they're at home for maybe a couple waking hours a day because they're at school or with their friends or at sports or anything else, and then sleeping. And from like 18 onwards, like you barely see your kids.
Well, and that's a big, when I think about no matter who I'm working with in my career, connection is something I speak endlessly about, right? I don't care what you do for a living, but connection with your family, your partner, your kids is so important. And so you're right. You want your kid at, I know I've done a good job with my 13-year-old when it comes to connection, taking those little moments of really listening, right? Being vulnerable, of him saying I did something that hurt his feelings, right? When you're 8-year-old and you think you're 8, what feelings do you have? And he tells you like, Dad, it hurt my feelings when you didn't, watch me throw that basketball. Like, I'm so sorry, I'm going to pay attention now because these are all the little seeds of connection that you're planting. So when your teen is 15, 18, 20, they want to come back and seek that connection with you.
Right.
We talked a little bit about attachment earlier. There's going to be a period of detachment where they have to, make mistakes and learn in that way. But if you've done a good enough job, they circle back and they circle back to wanting that attachment again. So that's something when I'm working with, any population, frontline workers or parents or whoever it is, reminding them that is so important when we're talking about the entire family unit and how your mental health and your wellness trickles down and impacts your entire family.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would say my wife and I are going through that right now. Like it's just so easy to be on our phones or for me to be working at home or for me. And it's like, and sometimes the thought is like, well, he's 6 months.
Right.
He's not going to remember that I didn't watch him roll over. Yeah. Right. But at the same time, you're kind of like, maybe he will, maybe he won't.
These are the formative years.
These are the formative years, right? And I have to be very like conscious, and my wife is she's learning how to be very gentle with it. But she is sometimes like you need to put your phone away for the next like hour. And I'm like, but like I have stuff to do. And she's like, yeah, but like at this current moment in time, there's nothing more important than just hanging out with your son for a little bit.
Well, just like you would block and schedule your day, right? So that's the other thing I often challenge people to do is, for a block of the day, put your phone, I can't remember, I listened to this in a podcast and it was great advice. Put your phone in the upstairs bathroom for 1 hour. Right. So you're not, you're on the main floor, you don't have access to go to it. Yeah. And for that 1 hour, even if you have to set a timer, but for that 1 hour, you are engaged in that moment, right? Because you still have to work, you still have to function, you still have to get things done. And you'll learn, you and I can talk later about this so much, but as your kid gets older, it becomes, I have to do the dishes, I have to cook, but you're going to be a part of it, right? So connection doesn't have to be.
I've seen that a lot on social media, which has actually been kind of neat to like see and read because on social media, they basically, the things that I've seen is like, your kids don't want you to be like, here's the iPad while I go do these things. They just want to be around you. They just want to be involved in the thing. And maybe it doesn't mean that you're giving your kid the knife to dry, but you can let them dry a plate. You can let them dry a fork. Absolutely. You can let them do those. They just want to be around you.
Right.
And so many people just are like, well, here's the iPad. Go play in the other room. We're busy. And
because it's hard, it takes your control away, right? It takes your control away as to like, well, I do it better. No, they're not going to do it as good as you're going to do, but you're also teaching them along the way some autonomy, and that builds their self-esteem and self-confidence if they can do these things on their own too. So, I mean, there's so many things that come out of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, benefits.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could talk for hours about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we will. Well, we're wrapping up time here. I'm gonna end. And this is going to be an interesting question for you from a psychotherapy perspective. We've talked with other business owners, CEOs of companies, etc. We always end the podcast with, what does success mean to Laurel? So from a social worker background to psychotherapist to now running your own business, what does success mean to you?
That's a really interesting question, because in my early years, success was really when I would get those performance reviews in my younger years, that was success, right? My boss thinks I'm doing a good job. It didn't matter anything else. Success was if I got asked to sit on 5 more committees. I'm not getting more money, but I'm, clearly able to, function in this role, and they think I'm good. So I'm gonna take on more responsibility. Yeah. It's definitely really shifted to more of a client perspective. So success a lot for me right now is, are my clients happy with my service, right? Are my clients at the end of the day saying, I'll get an email. I got one recently that was like, I just need to follow up and let you know, yesterday was really impactful, and I felt so much better when I left your office. Success for me right now is a client coming in and say, God, I didn't really want to come here today, and I didn't know what we were going to talk about, but I can't believe we just talked for an hour. We could have talked for 2 hours, and I feel so much better that I was able to release some of that. Yeah. That really for me right now is getting that one-on-one impact. I'm not trying to impact an entire collective. I am trying to just one-on-one work with that individual and what they need in that moment. Yeah. So for me, I would say on a business level, that is success, right? Getting new referrals, having clients refer me out to their friends and community. Yeah. I don't take that lightly. I take that as in like we've really built a trust and a connection there, that you value me as much as I value you. Yeah. I guess, and in my personal life, success is just really my family being proud of me, me being proud of me. Like I know how much hours and a week and dedication I put into my development, my self-growth, my learning, my own therapy process, right? Like I continue to still stay on my own therapy journey with my therapist and self-reflect and work on myself. So I think just really understanding myself, when I think from a interpersonal perspective, talking about attachment, talking about my own childhood and how these things formed me, good and, maybe not so good. Sure. And working at that, really getting vulnerable and working less from a fear base and more of like an excitement base. So yeah, I definitely measure it a lot different than I did 20 years ago. Yeah.
And I think it's going to shift though. It will always shift as we grow, as our businesses grow, as our families grow, it becomes something different. But I do like the fact, I love the fact that you mentioned the individual piece, because I'm a big Jordan Peterson follower. And I love the one thing that he says, that like, in order to change the world, you can't change the world. You have to change the things that you can change. So whether that's making your bed, or like, you can only do what you can control. Yeah. And if enough people control the things that they can control, then we can all collectively make a better world, but it starts with us. So I love that. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate the conversation. I'm sure it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. Nope. Well, listen, guys, you can find us, as always, on all the streaming platforms, whether it's podcasts, whether it's YouTube, Spotify. You guys know where to find us. And until next time, thanks for watching.